everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek. Well, we're on to week 2 of the DCnU relaunch, and that means we've got 2 more reviews to do. We'll start with my personal selection for this week, Paul Cornell's self-described medieval Justice League book, Demon Knights.
This title starts with us witnessing one of the most famous moments in legend, the fall of Camelot. Sir Bedivere laments the fall of this great city and sees King Arthur's body being taken to Avalon by his handmaidens. Following his liege's final orders, he throws the fabled Excalibur back to the Lady of the Lake. As the sword sinks, one of Arthur's handmaidens, Xanadu, thinks better of the situation. With a "sod this," she dives after the sword but fails to reach it. As the castle falls to enemy forces, Merlin laments the inability to hold Camelot with the pre-rhyming Etrigan the demon. As Jason of Norwich warns the sorcerer of the approaching horde, Merlin casts a spell binding Jason and Etrigan together. Merlin disappears in a flash of light, leaving Jason to carry this terrible burden. The story then jumps ahead to a barbarian horde with their entourage of dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, and...
Oh, not again.
This is the army of the questing queen. She and her consort, Mordru, of future, or is that now past, JSA and Legion of Superhero villainy, accept a baby as tribute from the villages that they've just pillaged. Mordru casts a spell and the baby is possessed. It prophesies the questing queen will find what she is questing for before the spirit overloads its host body and the baby goes boom.
Okay, say it with me 3 times fast. How many quests can the questing queen quest for before the baby goes boom? How many quests can the questing queen quest for before the baby goes boom? How many quests can the questing queen quest for...
The horde will soon pass through a tiny village called Little Spring. It's to Little Spring we cut to, finding a slightly older Jason and Madame Xanadu.
She's got huge tracts of land.
Jason hopes to spend their time here in peace, but Xanadu, now his girlfriend, is skeptical given their history. Sure enough, their hopes are shattered as they come upon an axe-wielding barbarian by the name of Vandal Savage. The same Vandal Savage who will one day be a supervillain Blight on the DC Universe. Again, assuming he shows up in the current timeline. Reboots. Jason and Xanadu mention they haven't seen him in 90 years, and we cut to the 3 immortals reminiscing about old times. Someone speaking in Celtic doubts their stories of being at Camelot. The Celt in question is one Sir Yeston, a shiny gold swordsman, though the trio doubt the man part. The group is further distracted by commotion at the bar. The bartender is refusing to serve Al-Jabbar, a foreigner and inventor, but is quickly bullied into being nice by an Amazon named Exoristos.
Pronunciation-wise, this is the best I can do, folks, and you can trust me, the laced Angry Geek.
We cut back to the monk who showed Xanadu and Jason the way into Little Spring. He's being beaten by an advance guard from the horde when the brutes are all shot down by an archer on horseback. He begs her to warn the village, but it's too late. Members of the horde barge into the inn and lay claim to all they see, upsetting the immortals, magicians, and foreigners who've gathered there. Repeating a familiar spell, we see Jason transform into Etrigan, who questions what Jason has gotten him into this time. Xanadu explains their current situation before giving Etrigan, as the British might say, a good snog, showing that she's two-timing Jason with his body mate. Detecting the release of magic, Mordru and the Queen, who makes mention of repairing their broken world, decide to send in the dragons.
Well, if you're going to burn down the house, you may as well use dragons. I'm pretty sure that sounded cleverer in my head than when I said it out loud. Let's take a look at the good and the bad of Demon Knights.
Well, I'm happy to say there isn't much bad, other than the fact that some of the original characters who show up for the first time in this book are simply tossed in with the briefest of introductions. Some don't even get named. However, at a time when every DC team book is either moving much too slowly or giving us too much background information at the cost of character development, Demon Knights hits a nice pace. Building up mystery around your central players is never a bad thing, and I look forward to flashbacks about the long history between Xanadu and Jason, while getting to know more about new characters like Al-Jabbar. It's okay to leave some things to future issues, as long as we get a feel for the team right up front. That having said, these new characters do have a tendency to come off as stereotypes. The ladies' man with a mustache who invents things? Gee, never seen that character before. Or the snooty pretty boy who thinks he's better than everyone else? Or my favorite, the man-hating lesbian? Although in fairness, no note of her sexuality has been made yet, but that castration line speaks for itself. Also, setting a team book in the Dungeons & Dragons style environment might seem risky for a company like DC, but with hits like Game of Thrones out there and more, like The Hobbit, to come, I think it's an idea whose time has come. Paul Cornell makes the most of this setting by using several immortal characters that we know, or at least we did know, from the contemporary DC universe. Where they are in current times is still up in the air, but since we know the future of some of these characters, we're going to be closely watching for certain things. Like that moment where Vandal Savage acts a little selfishly or cruelly, signaling the villain he will one day become. Or better yet, Etrigan breaking into his first rhyming stanza. Also, Cornell spares us the dialogue full of thees and thous and writes these characters using contemporary speech patterns, and it doesn't hurt that Demon Knights is funny. Setting this after the fall of Camelot lets us work in Etrigan's origins, but not have to be saddled with the characters of Arthurian legend like Merlin. Well, at least not yet. Also, this book's penciler, Diogenes Neves, is a real treat. He captures the feel of this era wonderfully. The buildings and the clothing all looks authentic, and the action scenes all have a natural and not static feel to them.
I also really enjoyed Xanadu's love triangle with Jason and Etrigan. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, if there's one thing that makes me recommend this book, it's that it's a lot of fun. So far, all of the DCnU relaunch titles I've been reading have been trying to be overly dark and serious, which has always been more Marvel's modus operandi. This book is fun. It's full of humor, sex, and action, and that's just what I want in my escapism. I give Demon Knights 4 out of 5 stars. Moving on to this week's viewer choice book. It wasn't one that I predicted would get a lot of votes, but boy was I wrong. It's also a strangely appropriate title for the last Angry Geek. Whip out your power rings and get ready to cough up blood. Good times. As for the first time ever, we look at a book from DC starring an army of warriors wearing magic rings that wasn't a terrible summer movie. It's Red Lanterns.
In the dreaded space sector 666, a group of aliens torture and mutilate a poor little bastard for no other reason than their own sadistic enjoyment. Bored with his reactions, they find a new victim. Hoping to skin this cat, they bring it aboard when Dextar's red ring begins translating his thoughts into words for them. He quickly attacks several of the crew before being collared and stabbed. This brings aboard his pissed-off master, Atrocitus, the last angry Ismaltian. The leader of the Red Lantern Corps makes quick work of the crew, all the while lamenting to himself that he no longer feels the same rage he once did. We cut to Earth where an old man is held up by a thug with a brick.
Hello, I'm the last Angry Geek, and I represent the National Brick Association. Sure, brick control is fine, in theory. But just remember, if you take away our bricks, then only the criminals will have bricks. Damn them all to hell!
Back on the Red Lantern homeworld of Ismalt, Atrocitus lays Dextar down to heal in front of their power battery and commands his lanterns to stop fighting one another. Bleeze, the winged Red Lanterness, says, more or less, that their rage won't die down and they can't stop fighting. Atrocitus demands obedience, but Bleeze just laughs him off, leading him to wonder if they can sense the weakness growing within him or if her febrile mind fails to understand.
Febrile mind? So she's a Fibrillion? Oh, from the planet Fibrillos Gamma.
Atrocitus visits the corpse of Krona, the Mad Guardian, the man responsible for turning the robotic manhunters loose on Sector 666 and slaughtering all life within. Atrocitus laments that he was not able to gain vengeance on Krona, who himself was killed by Hal Jordan of the Green Lanterns. He then flashes back to the days when he was a psychologist named Atros, who loved his wife and daughter.
Good lord, I know beauty is subjective, but even for aliens, that is one ugly kid. I mean, if your child looks like Roy Batty, it's time to consider plastic surgery.
Back on Earth, the brick attack victim from earlier has just died. As they leave his bedside, his two grandsons argue.
What is going on here?
Ray is consumed by anger at the death of the man who raised them, while John is cold and dispassionate, arriving after his grandfather's death because he had to turn in a thesis. Frustrated at his brother's lack of caring, Ray decks him and promises to get revenge for their granddad. Atrocitus, fresh from his flashback, plunges his talons into Krona's body and is surprised to pull out fresh blood. Using his blood magic that helped him to create his core, he tries to divine a new path for the Red Lanterns. Witnessing scenes of injustice on Earth and alien worlds, Atrocitus comes to a decision. His core will seek out vengeance on those who deserve it, a strike force to inflict its rage on the cruel and evil. But as he is coming to this decision, Bleeze begins to incite the Red Lantern Corps into a riot, calling on them to rage across Eastmalt as their leader's authority wanes.
Ah! I'm so angry! Unlike every other show where people have pointed out that I'm not angry, and really that's understandable because the phrase Last Angry Geek is a takeoff of the phrase Last Angry Man, and it's intended to mean that I'm passionate about things rather than outright enraged, but still this time, I'm angry! Angry enough to look at what was good and bad about Red Lanterns.
Unfortunately, this is going to be a very lopsided review, as I didn't feel there was much good about this title. For a book focusing on a core that's immersed in rage, there's very little genuine emotion in this title. Atrocitus spends most of his time moaning about how he's not as angry as he used to be. Another review of this book I read called him emo. I wouldn't go that far, but I do feel that to hear Atrocitus complain about going through the motions as he brutally slaughters the alien sadists takes away from the excitement of that action sequence. That, and since the Red Rings tend to overwhelm others with rage, it means we can't get any decent dialogue out of any of the other Red Lanterns. I was at a loss for several minutes trying to understand just what the hell Bleeze was saying in each of her scenes. It's obvious either Ray or John, or possibly even the Brick Mugger, will become the new Red Lantern of Earth, but at least those scenes provide some dialogue, not to mention genuine emotion. The Red Lanterns are sadly one-note monsters, best used as the raging beast to be reined in by the heroes of other books. Author Pete Milligan has handled strange things before, not the least of which was Marvel's X-Statix. But here the main character reads as untrue to his original intent and having an emotional crisis that just comes across as phony. Atrocitus is a shark, meant to be heading towards its next meal, not lamenting about the one that got away. Plus, I have to wonder about this reinventing of the core. That just comes across as a way to try and turn a legion of murderers into a more acceptable force of anti-heroes. Are we ready for Ghost Rider in space? Avenging those who can't avenge themselves due to intergalactic tragedy. Rather than charting a new path for the Red Lanterns, a juicier story idea might be exploring their mystic side. Like how exactly Atrocitus went from a rational psychologist to an emotional magic user. How did he learn to use his victim's blood to divine the future? That seems like a story path that offers a lot of possibilities. Artistically speaking, I have to say whenever we were on Eastmalt, the color palette of red, and more red got old very quickly. Penciler Ed Bennis does a decent job of drawing the book, though I suspect he thinks Dexter is a cat alien and not a real Earth cat. Although granted, how many Earth cats are blue, but still, I've never seen a cat's arms hang like that. And of course, Bennis is incapable of drawing a female without her hips at a 90-degree angle to the rest of her spine. It's the only way to explain how they twist like that to show off both their chest and butt without breaking their backs. Still, maybe I'm overthinking this and Blease's species can bend that way. Perhaps rubber spines are common in Fibrillians. Oh, and special points to editor Brian Cunningham for not catching that typo.
You people are lucky I love you. Okay, given the Red Lantern's importance in The Blackest Night, the Green Lantern movie video game, and their role as villains in the upcoming Green Lantern animated series, I can understand why they'd get their own title. But Red Lanterns falls flat with too much navel-gazing and not enough balls-to-the-wall action. Personally, I'd rather the Indigo Tribe or Larfleeze got his own title. Hopefully better than his Christmas special. I give Red Lanterns 1.5 stars. Well, don't forget, you can still vote on which comic I review for Week 4 at the Comic Book Issues Facebook group. I'll see you next time for DCnU Week 3 when I review Red Hood and the Outlaws. Will this make books with red in the title 0 for 2, or will it buck the trend? Plus my review of Viewer's Choice number 3. I'll see you next time here on Comic Book Issues.